Olá, boa noite, seja bem-vindo a mais um encontro nosso no 7 a 7. Nesta noite nós seguimos acompanhando e vamos chegando nesta reta final da palestra proferida pelo pastor presbiteriano norte-americano Tim Keller na Inglaterra. Hoje nós vamos ver o âmago, a essência, o coração da força, da vitalidade, da ética cristã que se encontram precisamente na própria pessoa de Deus. É curioso nós percebermos como, biblicamente falando, o conteúdo da fé afeta diretamente a nossa ética e, no caso do cristianismo, indica diretamente uma relação com uma pessoa. Biblicamente, não há como nós separarmos a crença cristã dos resultados da relação com Deus e com o próximo. Foi o próprio Senhor Jesus Cristo quem resumiu a lei e os profetas em amar a Deus acima de tudo e ao próximo como a si mesmo. Veja que consiste em um relacionamento. Quando Paulo faz a relação da realidade, da natureza de Cristo e sua relação com o próximo, com o ser humano, Paulo então faz uma aplicação disso para a vida cristã quando ele escreve aos Filipenses no capítulo 2, a partir do versículo 5. Esteja atento ao que nos diz a palavra do Senhor. Tende em vós o mesmo sentimento que houve também em Cristo Jesus, pois ele, subsistindo em forma de Deus, não julgou como usurpação ser igual a Deus. Antes a si mesmo se esvaziou, assumindo a forma de servo, tornando-se em semelhança de homens e reconhecido em figura humana. A si mesmo se humilhou, tornando-se obediente até a morte e morte de cruz. Pelo que também Deus o exaltou sobremaneira, ele deu o nome que está acima de todo nome, para que ao nome de Jesus se dobre todo o joelho nos céus, na terra e debaixo da terra, e toda língua confesse que Jesus Cristo é Senhor, para a glória de Deus Pai. Que Deus nos abençoe.
When Charles Taylor's book, Source of the Self, first came out, and he made this point, an atheist reviewing it wrote this. He said, perseverance in virtue will require self-sacrifice, and self-sacrifice seems to require some transcendental justification or motivation, of which the most common and perhaps the most logical is belief in God. Or so Taylor says circumspectly. Since modern freedom entails the rejection of all transcendence, modern virtue is wholly contingent. Can we be good for long without God? Taylor's doubts, he writes, are daunting to me. But let me give you an example, just to put a fine point on what I'm talking about here and what Taylor's talking about. Not too far from where I grew up, in Pennsylvania, in October 2006, a gunman went to an Amish schoolhouse and he took a bunch of little school children hostage. And during that whole crisis, he shot and killed 5 of them, girls, I think ages 7 to 13. And then he killed himself. Within hours of the shooting, the Amish community had come around both the parents of that shooter, who lived in that area, and around the wife and the 3 children of the shooter who lived there, and had come to them and expressed sympathy and said, we want to be with you for the hard days ahead. When the shooter's funeral occurred, more than half the people who were at the funeral were Amish people. And an Amish spokesman said that all the family members who lost children forgave the shooter and his family. And of course, in America, there was a huge amount of discussion about this. Everybody was shocked at their ability to reconcile, to love, to reach out. And what a lot of people wrote back then, I remember very clearly, is this is what Americans are capable of. This is us at our best. But 2 or 3 years later, 3 sociologists wrote a book called Amish Grace. And in that book, they wrote that we should not think that our Western society is capable of producing this sort of thing anymore. Forgiveness is an act of self-renunciation. Forgiveness is an act of self-sacrifice for the good of others, for the good of the community, Forgiveness means I could pay back, but I'm not going to. It's an act of self-renunciation and self-sacrifice. But, the sociologist said, our culture increasingly is a consumeristic culture, it's an individualistic culture, and it teaches self-actualization. It teaches self-assertion, and it teaches you never to do self-renunciation. Never do that. And so they said, we're more and more going to become incapable of having people who can forgive, who can share power, who can make sacrifices. We're just not producing them. And they said, but see, the Amish culture was based on Christianity, and here's what the Amish culture was based on. We're saved through what Jesus Christ has done. He had all glory. He had all power. And he had every right to be angry at us, his creation, for turning away from him. But instead, he gave all that up, and he gave and he gave and he gave. He gave up his glory and became a human being. He gave up his life, and he went to the cross and died on the cross. As he was dying, saying, Father, forgive them. They don't even really understand what they're doing. And what the sociologist said, on the basis of that we're saved through the self-giving of Christ, then we hear Christ saying, what? Take up your cross and follow me. Lose yourself to find yourself. Don't live for yourself anymore, but live for God and your neighbor. You see, that's drilled into the Amish, and as a result they can do that, but that's not drilled into us. What we need in our society, which is producing self-actualizers, self-asserters, we need millions of people who've been shaped by the self-giving of Jesus Christ, who say, I'm a Christian because of Jesus' self-giving, and we're able to say, therefore, I live for God and for my neighbor, not necessarily for myself, because I've got everything I need in him.